it's your sense of body awareness. It's what allows you to walk through a door without banging into the door frame.
I do not have this. So you are certified in sensory integration.
Yes.
Now, can you just tell us, let's just open up with what is that? I know a lot of people are probably like, is that the same thing as sensory processing? Is that a disorder? Is it a need? Like, what is that?
Right. So, well, if you go into the schools now, everyone thinks everything's sensory, and that's not necessarily the case, but sensory is everything because it's how we take in information. So if you think of the brain as a computer, you get information coming in, you get the input, the brain is the processor, and then the output is the action or the behavior. So we get information through our senses. We hear things, we see things, we feel things, we move our bodies, we feel things on the inside, and that's how we get every bit of information that makes us function. And we process it. So sensory processing is that process. Now, if you're processing everything quickly and efficiently, then everything's fine. When you have a sensory processing disorder, you got some faulty processing going on, and it's going to affect your action and your doing.
We just take these things for granted, right? Moving.
Absolutely.
All of our senses, we just sort of think that, oh, they just will work. They just kind of.
Sure. And before we went live, we were talking about how we're both tactile defensive. So if there is a tag in my shirt, my focus is going to be on that tag and not on whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing or somebody's expecting me to do. I'm thinking about the fact that there's a knife in the back of my neck, which is the tag on the shirt. So it really changes your behavior, and it's completely invisible to the people who are looking at you. But meanwhile, it's this internal struggle because our processor, our brain, is just not taking in the right, or they're not getting the right information from their environment. So that's sensory processing in a very simple way. It gets more complicated because we learn the 5 senses in school: seeing, touching, smelling, tasting, and hearing. I think I got them all. But then there's 3 more that we like to talk about. There's a big word. There's the vestibular sense, which is your system of movement. There is proprioception, and that is it's your sense of body awareness. It's what allows you to walk through a door without banging into the door frame.
I do not have this. I have
also
bruises to prove it all my life.
It's the people who can't walk behind you because they give you flat tires, because they don't know where they are in relationship to you. Oh, they're real, and we're live now because we all have those issues. Yes, so it is a huge thing. Or kids who play too hard on their toys, or they play too hard on their siblings. You don't have that graded control. That's proprioception. That is a sense. And that can really impact behaviors. And the other one...
It's bad. People think it's bad behavior.
It's not bad behavior.
It's an inability to process sensory input.
Right. Their processor is inefficient. So we have to teach them about their bodies so that they can process it correctly and be more efficient. And then the last sense is interoception. Now, this is the one that's getting a ton of research and a ton of attention right now. And it makes, for lack of a better word, it makes a lot of sense. That's like a dad joke, sorry. But so interoception is what you're feeling on the inside. If you're feeling hungry, or if you have a headache, or if you're tired, those are all feelings. Those are senses. So interoception, if you have faulty interoception, that is absolutely going to impact your behavior, because we all know how we are when you have a headache or when you're hungry.
Angry, as my
yes,
calls it.
It's amazing. So I come from the philosophy, and when I say, joking in the schools that everything's sensory, when you think about it practically, everything starts with interpreting sensations from the world, what we see, what we hear, what we feel. And from there, that impacts us. So if you start from the brain instead of starting from the behavior, it's just a game changer. That you start solving problems and helping people, adults and kids, process sensory information better, as opposed to just reacting to their adaptive response or maladaptive response, if you will, to that processing. So I hope that makes sense.
That it does to me, and we're going to even break it down further, because I want to talk about this movement thing, because since that was definitely, for the very first time that we met, I met you maybe like a year and a half ago at a conference, and it was just, I mean, for me, I think it was, for both of us, I think it was like a mutual appreciation. I went into your workshop, and it was called Kids.
It was off of Russ Green's Kids Do Well If They Can. It was Kids Do Well If They Can Move.
They can move. And I was sitting in that workshop, and you got everybody so fired up and so excited, again, because you're just so passionate about helping us understand this new thing, and why does moving our bodies help integrate our senses? Is that what it does?
Right. Yes. So your vestibular sense, which is what we're talking about, it's in the lower part of the brain, and it's kind of like the foundation of the house. So, and we always talk about the research. We know now through brain scans that the vestibular system touches every part of the brain. So it is so important. It touches the speech centers of the brain, which is why when you go on a roller coaster, you scream. It's just amazing. Or you put kids on a screen and yay, you get vocalizations from it. I use that all of the time in treatment, especially with nonverbal kids who, you know, are on the autistic spectrum. We use this powerful foundational sense. So yeah, so it's real, and it is the foundation of everything, and that's why we use movement. So during my workshops, I will have everybody get up and move, and then they'll sit back down and they'll be more focused, because it helps you focus and pay attention, and it allows us to get regulated so that we can meet expectations.
So it's like we get these breaks that our brains get to maybe rest from the mental cognitive load that they've been, you know, holding or trying to hold together, and we get to move and get calm, recentered. I mean, those are sort of like woo-woo words, I guess, recenter, that people will say, but really our bodies are actually realigning, getting back in order so that we can function.
And we use the term, I use the term regulation a lot.
Yes.
And when I lecture all around, I talk about regulation. And I think the buzzword is self-regulation. Mm-hmm. But I'm in my mid-40s, and I still have problems self-regulating at times. So what I'm really talking about is dysregulation. Yes. Regulation versus dysregulation. So if a child or a classroom full of children are feeling dysregulated, if you take the time to get them regulated, then you can learn. And using movement and triggering that vestibular system in that lower part of the brain, that's a surefire way to get kids regulated. And it could be a kid who's low energy, who needs to be lifted up. And it could be the kid who's really high energy, who needs to get their wiggles out in order for them to focus. It works both ways. So that's why OTs are always talking about movement. And you see in the literature, movement, get them up and move. Because we know from brain science that it works. So it's not some random research experiment. It's the actual neuro textbooks. We know this now.
So tell me about, this is what I want to know, because I know that, you know, when teachers even who aren't exposed to this kind of information first hear about it, they think, oh my God, I have so many kids, I can't help one kid focus on regulating. But you're saying that it's like a group activity that everybody benefits from. So what are the behaviors that parents and even teachers are looking for to say this is dysregulation and I need to work on regulation?
Well, it can vary. So let's think parents first. Kids who are they're kind of all over the place. You know, they're bouncing around. You're telling them to put their shoes on, and they're just bouncing around. In class, it's the kid who's shaking. Go ahead.
You're saying that this is not just, I don't want to listen, I want to just do what I want.
Right. It's never just, I don't want to listen.
Right. I need backup. I know I'm behind you, but you've got science, you've got research. You know, you've got people need to hear it. They don't. You don't know it.
Well, and
I think we take it for granted.
No, we come up with a lot of cliches. Like, we like to label things and try to justify it within ourselves, but it's not backed up by anything. We say, oh, they're so manipulative. Oh, they're just seeking attention. Oh, they just don't want to work. We're making those things up.
We're making
we're just making them up
based on our view of that behavior. But so this is okay. So the kids that are all over the place, they can't seem to control themselves, focus on tying their shoes.
Yes, your leg shakers in school, your kids who they're sitting down to work and they're just drifting off, and they're sitting down and they're just drifting off. They're dysregulated. Or kids who they're just either zoned out, they're just low and slow and a little bit off. That a regulated kid will be able to look at you, hear what you're saying, and go ahead and follow through with whatever expectation you had put on them. A dysregulated kid just can't pull it together to do what was asked.
No matter what we tell them, they need this physical change in their environment and their system somehow.
Right. So, and that's where all of, and I always go back to the Whole Brain Child, Tina Payne Bryson and Dan Siegel's book about connect and redirect. It's when you have a dysregulated kid, a kid who we as parents, because I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, that we perceive them as not listening, not following directions, not paying attention. If we just say dysregulated, it's a game changer, because if they're doing what we would consider a bad behavior, well, that's a bad behavior. That lends you towards either bribing them to do it or punishing them for not doing it. But if you say that they're dysregulated, well, then that lends itself to helping them get regulated. It's a complete mindset change.
A different perspective.
A totally different perspective. So, okay, he's not listening he's unable to listen to me right now. Let's get him regulated. And then guess what? He can actually follow along.
So what does that look like? Because if parents make that shift and they look at their 3-year-old who's running around, and I know that my sister has 3, 5, and 7 right now.
Okay.
So she's swirling in little kidness. But what do you do when those, how do you get a kid regulated? What does that look like for parents at home or teachers in the classroom? Just some simple things. Are there easy ways to start that process, or do you have to see an OT?
So, no. Although it's really cool to hang out with OTs. Just saying.
That's free, I'm not going to lie.
They're really cool people. So for a parent, because you have less numbers to deal with than a teacher. So as a parent, when there is a child who is dysregulated, my favorite saying in the world is to meet them where they are. And that is where you get into that connection. So if you have a silly, quote unquote, attention seeking, I'm going to steal Mona Delahooke's phrase here and call it attachment seeking, not attention seeking. But when you have this attention seeking, wild running around 3-year-old, go there with them, because you're actually that going there with them, meeting them where they are, that will start the connection process. If you take that short amount of time, and it doesn't take long. Kids like to play. They're wired to play. They like to be silly. If you go into the silliness, they will follow you. And it's risky at first, because we're wired to, we got to get things done. We got to get them fed. We got to get them dressed. We got to get their shoes on. We got to get them out the door. We got 6 loads of laundry we got to do. I don't have time for this silly play stuff.
So you save time. If you go there first, you save time.
You save so much time. You get more done. But you have to be brave enough to take that risk to meet them where they are and go there.